everybody and welcome to Music with Meg. I'm Meg and today I'm going to be answering all of your questions about learning a new instrument.
Everybody follow me, it's Music with Meg.
Let me start by wishing you all a very happy new year. Now you might have set yourself the goal to learn a new instrument this year, and if it's your first time learning an instrument, it can be a little bit daunting. So I asked you to send me your questions all about learning a first instrument, and I'm going to answer them for you now. Here we go. Now our first question is, how can I or my child decide what instrument to learn as a first instrument? Now, this is a great question. The first thing that you want to think about when you're trying to decide a new instrument is what instrument you want to learn to play. I know it sounds obvious, but people can get really bogged down in what instruments they should learn to play. Sometimes people can become obsessed with what orchestras they can get into or music scholarships they'll be eligible for. But I promise you, you will enjoy learning an instrument so much more if you actually want to play it. Remember that learning an instrument can take a really long time. It can take you years. So you need to choose something that you're actually going to want to commit the time to. A great place to start is think about the different styles of music that you can play. If you really like jazz, then maybe you'd want to learn a jazz instrument like the saxophone or the piano. If you love listening to Taylor Swift and you fancy writing some songs of your own, maybe you could learn the guitar. Another thing to consider is that whilst all instruments have their challenges, there are some instruments that can be quicker to get to grips with. For example, the piano is a good starting instrument because you don't have to have any technical ability to play notes on the piano. And because all of the keys on the piano are tuned, you don't have to work on your intonation, whereas other instruments like woodwind instruments or stringed instruments require you to have a little bit of technique before you can make sound. Ultimately though, if you love the instrument you're learning, you're more likely to want to practice it, and then you'll find yourself getting better and better. If you're still not sure what instrument's right for you, then lots of different orchestras and musical organisations hold these open house events where you can go and you can try instruments and see which one might suit you. Our next question is, how do I find a good music teacher? Now, there are loads of music teachers out there, and if you just type your instrument into Google, I'm sure you will find a whole bunch of results. But it's really important that you find a teacher that you're going to get along with. So before you meet your teacher, think about what you want to gain from your instrument. Do you want to learn to read music, or do you want to play by ear? Do you want to learn folk style violin, or do you want to learn classical? And then you can also consider whether you want to do music grades. These can really help if you want to get into universities or orchestras. But if you're just playing for fun, grades aren't necessarily the way to go. There are also loads of different teaching styles. So when you meet your teacher, you'll get a sense for their style. And don't be afraid to ask your teacher questions. You want to make sure that you and your teacher are both on the same page about what you want to learn. Finding a good teacher is really important, and it's worth noting that what's good for one person might not be good for another. What I would say is that as a beginner, you don't necessarily need to spend the most money to get the most experienced teacher. But when you're starting out, try and find somebody who can keep your passion and your enthusiasm alive, and make sure that your teacher understands what you want from your lessons. Okay, our next question is, what age should my child learn an instrument? Now, this is a question I get asked all the time, and I think there's no right answer. I think lots of music teachers have different opinions about this. So this is my opinion, it's not fact. The short answer, in my opinion, is that 4.5 years old is probably the earliest I'd want to start a child on an instrument. So that's roughly the age that your child would go to school in the UK. But there are lots of things you can do to help your child become interested in music, and you can start those things from a baby. You can take your children to baby music classes, or just look on YouTube or look online for some engaging, child-friendly content. If you listen to lots of different genres of music and if you sing along with your children, then I guarantee you they'll love music as much as you do. When I was growing up, one of the things that encouraged me to learn music was when my parents would take me to concerts and even just to watch buskers in the local area. Now, if your child definitely wants to learn a musical instrument, then great. I think there should be no age barrier to learning, so whatever they want to learn, go for it. But it is worth noting that some instruments can be more tricky for smaller children to pick up. You can usually find child-friendly or smaller versions of instruments. If your child isn't sure what instrument they want to learn, or if they're a little young to be picking up a saxophone or a violin, then I would recommend the piano. You can get electric keyboards or electric pianos for super cheap, and it's such a great instrument for understanding the foundations of music. Even a toddler can sit at a piano and understand that these notes are high and these notes are low. And finally, please remember that you don't have to spend a fortune on a first instrument, especially if your child is beginning on a smaller sized instrument. Don't spend loads of money on it because they're only going to grow out of it in a few years' time. Do you have any tips for effective practice when I don't have much time in the day? Now, I have written an essay on this over on my Patreon page, which the link is below. So if you do want a really detailed practice plan that you can follow on any instrument, then go to my Patreon and you'll find my top tips for effective practice. But to paraphrase what I've written there, I would say the best way to practice a musical instrument is routine. It's much better to do 15 minutes a day than to do an hour once a week. Especially as a beginner, you really want to be getting the muscle memory going. That's the fastest way to get really good at your instrument. So if you're picking your instrument up for 10 or 15 minutes a day, then you're doing the right thing to get those muscles working, and also to keep practicing reading music. So what you can do is pick your instrument up. You can start with some scales, you can work on some tricky bits that you've been practicing, anything that your teachers set you. But don't overdo it in your practice sessions. As soon as you feel that you're beginning to get tired, put your instrument down and you can come back to it tomorrow. What I would say is set yourself a routine that you know you can stick to. You might not be able to spare 15 minutes every day, and that's fine. Why don't you see if you can carve yourself out 15 minutes 3 days a week? See how that goes, and once you've found that, stick to it. Make sure that you are strict with yourself and you do your practice every week. That is going to get you so far, and it's also a really good habit to get into, for as you progress, you can build those 15 minutes up, and soon you'll be doing half an hour practice every day, and it will just feel completely normal and routine. That's all of our questions. Thank you so much if you sent me a question. And if you have a question for me, you can leave it in the comments section below. And perhaps I will do another Q&A all about learning a musical instrument. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll know when my next video comes. And if you want access to the practice tips that I told you about, plus loads of other bonus content, then find me on Patreon at patreon.com/musicwithmeg. Have a lovely week, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye!